Hello, this is Dr. Chris Zimmer, and I'm back again with another video. We're getting awfully close to that date of July 1st, so I wanted to add a few things to it, especially since I've been seeing a lot in the news now. It turns out if we add the numbers together from the date, 7 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4, we get 14, which is the number of deliverance. So first thing I wanted to mention is it's not a feast day. In fact, if we go to Amos and we read Amos 8, it fills us in on that. This is about a basket of summer fruit, and this is God turning back to Israel after the rapture. He's turning his attentions on them. And we had summer, which began June 20th, so we're into the summer now. And this was from a suggestion from Rapture Ready 888. To take a look at the basket of summer fruit. So let's do that. First off, if we take our date, the 7/1/24, it's the 11th day of summer, and it's also the 11th of the 84-week day count pairs. So if we look at the very last day count pair, which was 84 days, we count 84 days from that eclipse, and that took us to 7/1. So we've got two 11s here associated with that, and that points us to 2/11, which is a heist or a robbery, which is the way God is framing this whole thing, pardon the pun, towards 7/1. And if we look at Amos 8:9, in fact, these four verses seem to follow what the world population is and is going to be in the future, in the very near future. Amos 8:9, and it shall come to pass in that day, says the Lord God, I will make the sun go down at noon. I will darken the earth in broad daylight. So at that time, 8/9, we had the date of 2/22, February 22nd, and that's one of the dates on our timeline. So this kind of marks when this should be said or this is mentioned. And it's a short time before the eclipse. So it's talking about the sun going down at noon and the earth being darkened in broad daylight. Well, we had a total solar eclipse over El Salto, Mexico on April 8th at 12:12 p.m. CST. The number 12 symbolizes God's power and authority, and that's during the noon hour. So it's the sun essentially going down at noon and darkening the earth in broad daylight. And with that population of 8.09 billion, if we go to Amos 8:10, then it starts off, I will turn your feasts into mourning. Now, this is the key feature here where it doesn't say I will turn a feast into mourning. It talks about your feasts, all of the feasts. So how can that happen? Well, it has to be on a non-feast day in order to turn them all into mourning. Otherwise, we would be pointed to look at one particular feast. And then it goes on to talk about turning songs into lamentation, sackcloth on every waist, baldness on every head, and it's end like a bitter day, and so on and so forth. Anyway, the world population is approximately 8.10, corresponding to Amos 8:10, 8.10 billion on 5/18/519. That was Pentecost. So that kind of dates when this corresponds to. And he's talking, God is saying this in the future tense. So he's saying it hasn't happened yet. He's saying, I will turn your feasts into mourning, future tense. Then if we go to Amos 8:11, and that just so happens to be what the world population is right now, if without rounding, we get 8.11 billion people. And it says, behold, the days are coming, again, future tense. I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread or a thirst of water, but hearing the words of the Lord. And then, of course, the only way that could happen is to take the church away, because the church is what proclaims the gospel, and they speak the words of the Lord. And Amos 8:11, it is the current world population, but it's also projected to be the population on 7/1. So we've got that coming up real quick in about a week or so from this video. And if we go to Amos 8:12, the projected world population will be 4 days after the prospective rapture on 7/5. That would be 8.12 billion. And it's saying now they shall wander from sea to sea, north to east, shall run to and fro, seeking the word of the Lord. Again, the gospel being preached, but shall not find it. So, in fact, they won't find two things. They won't find the word of the Lord, and they won't find 8.12 billion people on 7/5, because the rapture will supposedly have happened before that. So it's not a feast day. All right, and then I want to set this one straight now, because I only had half the information through all these videos that I've been doing. And we took 7 spirits of God, the Holy Spirit, and added it to the numerical value Yahweh, which is 26. If you put those together, you get 726, or Harpazo, which is half of the information. But if we take a clue from what I just did in the previous video, where we add Abba, G5, to Jesus, Jesus, G2424, then we come to the date 5/24/24. But we also have another Q in there where we add 24 days to 5/24, and that gives us 3/11, which was delay. Anyway, that's in the Greek. So, but that also clues us in. We can do this in the Hebrew. And if we look at Matthew 23:9, it says, "And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your father." And I believe that's a clue. One is your father. Strong's H1 is father. And we can put that up there with father H1, and we get 7-1 now. So we actually have the date. We can take it a bit further, and we go to H23, which is my father has gathered. And this sounds as though it's speaking of the rapture. And who would say my father? That would be Jesus. So if we add again, only this time in Hebrew, we add the Father and Jesus, 1 and 23, we get 24, and that gives us the year. Now we have 7/1/24. And we also have the time, if we go through and look at H853, which is the Aleph Tav, the positional values, if we add those together for Aleph Tav from the Hebrew alphabet, we get 23. So that gives us a complete time of 8:53:23, and then he's the bright morning star, so we add AM to that. But if that's not enough, we also had a confirmation when Venus was occulted by the moon on 4/7/2024 this year. We get the time of 8:53:23 AM MST, Mountain Standard Time. So we have a complete picture now. And also, if we go to a description of heaven, or we go to Revelation 4:4, which clues us in on the 24 thrones and 24 elders, so on, in white robes, crowns of gold on their head. And that clues us to 2024 again, but it also gives us 4:4, which is, it tells us what it is. It says a fishing hook, and this is a clue again towards a fishing theme or a fishing trip. Revelation 22:16, of course, is Jesus identifies himself as the bright and morning star. So we now have, with the names, we have a complete picture now. We have a complete date and a complete time, and confirmed by the occultation of Venus by the moon. Okay, and last time I went through, and this is absolutely striking. We actually have 4 books in the Bible, 2 in the Old Testament, 2 in the New Testament, that give us the date. Oops, went backwards. All right, 7/1/2024, and 2 of those books are in Psalms and Micah, and 2 are John and Luke. So if we put those together, we get 22, which is Revelation 22, it points to, which is a description of heaven, but it's also the end of the book. It's the last chapter of the last book of the Bible. So this signifies the end also. And I found a little bit more in Psalms. If you look at Psalm 71, and it's 24 verses long, so right there we have the date, 7/1/24. But if that's not enough, if we look at the actual scriptures, 2 and 4 both start off saying, "Deliver me." So this is calling for the rapture, "Deliver me." And then various other words like escape, save me, deliver, help me, so on and so forth, speaking about calling for the rapture. Well, we have a 2 and a 4, so we've got 24 there, but we also have some rapture speak in 20 and 24. And 20 is bring me up again from the depths of the earth, which is going up. It's a sort of a rapture theme. And then 24, for they are brought to shame who seek my hurt. Well, how are they brought to shame? They're brought to shame because they're left behind. So we've got 20 and 24 go together. So we have 2 instances of 24. Well, this is reminiscent of 524:24, where we found 3:11 on the Hebrew calendar. You add 24 to that date, and you get a delay. 24 is mentioned here twice as well. If we add 24 days to 7:1, in like manner, we arrive at 725. And Strong's G725, of course, is Harpagmos, which is another word for rapture. So instead of getting a delay when we add 24 days, this time we get rapture when we add 24 days. What else did I want? Oh, I also wanted to mention in Christina's dream, it's basically stated that 725 was there and 811, nobody could find 811. Well, 725, of course, is Harpagmos or rapture. So basically she is saying, or her dream was saying, that 725 or the rapture was there, but 811, the 8.11 billion people were not. It's somewhat of a lower number than that as far as world population. Okay, so anyway, that's the new thing that I found on Psalm 71, where it actually says 24 twice. So let's go to Micah 7. We went over this last time, but I'll just do it quickly. Micah 7, post-rapture, this is 20 verses, and if you look at only the verses that are speaking about something like the rapture, like verse number 1 says, "Woe is me, they have gathered the summer fruits," and that's, again, is rapture speak, and he is sad because apparently he was left behind. And then if we look at 2, it says, "The good man has perished or taken out of the earth," again, rapture. And then 3 doesn't say anything about the rapture itself, it just talks about corrupt judges and mischievous desires and so on and so forth. But then if we get back to, we'll get back to rapture speak in 4, where it says, "The day of thy watchman and thy visitation or reckoning cometh." So we've got essentially 3 verses that talk about the rapture here. And if you put them together, Micah 7, verse 1 and 2, so we get a 7, 1, 2, and then verse 4, 7, 1, 24. And then if we figure that it's 20 verses, we can also insert the 20 to get the full date of 7/1/2024. If we go to John 21, this is Jesus appearing to the 7 disciples. In the first one, it's just a setup for this scene at the Sea of Tiberias. But if we go to verse 2, it actually mentions the disciples who are present. We've got Nathaniel and sons of Zebedee and so on and so forth. If you add it all up, you get 7 disciples total. And then if we go to verse 3, that's Peter saying, "Oh, this is all about a fishing trip." He says, "I am going fishing." And then in verse 4, we're back to counting people again when it says, "When morning had come, Jesus," which is one person, "stood on the shore." So now we've got 7 disciples and Jesus, which is one more, in verses 2 and 4. And they're going fishing. So if we put that all together, again, we get 7/1/24. If we go to Luke 17, there is a lot of information here. I'm just going to cover it quickly. If we go 2 men in one bed, the one shall be taken, the other shall be left. So we get a 2-1-1. And from 3 verses, we get 211 3 times. So there's that robbery theme. And if we look vertically, then we've got 222 and a 111 and another 111, which point to day counts from the April 8th eclipse. And Luke is 24 chapters long, and the meaning of 17 is that of overcoming the enemy and complete victory. And then also in the acrostic, we have Satan, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is 4, 5, 6, 7, which is Satan, and that's 211 applied to that is Satan getting robbed. Okay, so we had one date that I first came up with, and this is 5 and 2 women, so we got a 5 and a 2. You had 2 and 2 men, we get 4, so we have 5, 2, 4. We look at 24 chapters, and that gives us the year 24. So we have a total 5, 24, 24, and of course that date was prominent on our 84-week timeline, but it wasn't the date of the rapture. If we keep looking, we look at the verse 37, and they answered and said to him, "Where, Lord?" So he said to them, "Wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together." Well, who are they? Jesus appointed 70 disciples to go out and preach in Luke 10:1. This was a little bit earlier in the book. This makes a total of 71 disciples, including himself. So there's that 7-1. And we can also bookend or put together 17, Luke 17 with 71, and we found that number in pi. So put it all together and you get 7-1-24. So the actual rapture date is here too, making the fourth book with that. All right, and then just quickly, we have, "I am coming as a thief." This is Jesus speaking of himself as coming as a thief, but it's also the day of the Lord that comes as a thief in the night, and this is in 5 different verses. 5, of course, is the number of grace. In California Police Code 211, right, is a robbery. And if we look at Pentecost on May 19th, that was Iyyar 11, which is 211. And we've been seeing 211 in Luke. So 211 somehow is associated with Pentecost. Well, the rapture didn't happen on Pentecost, but we did find, I'll show this a little bit later on in pi, that there is a point back to the day of Pentecost. Luke 24, the first time Satan is robbed, and there's an acrostic here in verses 4, 5, 6, 7, we see Satan again. And then if we go 4 through 9, we see 2:11 embedded in the script. So we've got another 2:11 where Satan is being robbed, and he was, of course, during Jesus' resurrection. Luke 2:11 in 2024, again, Satan being robbed a second time, but this is going to be in 2024. 2:11 in progress. We have 4 harpazo-like words from 724 to 727. Again, the acrostic is here, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have Satan in the acrostic, and these are all robbery-themed words, and including 725 has booty and prize as well. And then some of it, 726, of course, is to seize or to catch up, snatch away. So we've got this scene of somebody robbing someone or something, being catched up or being seized or snatched away. So this is, in this case, again, is Satan being robbed. All right, so now getting to something new. Here's the, in the news, I've been seeing a lot of different articles that really press the numbers. I've been seeing the numbers like crazy. U.S. carriers Reagan and Roosevelt join Pacific Valiant Shield 2024 drills, and this was posted on June 10th. And USS Theodore Roosevelt is CVN 71, so there's an indication of that date again, 71 or 71. And then these are Nimitz-class carriers, so I put a picture up there of the USS Nimitz, which is CVN 68, and we've been seeing 68 in the numbers as well. Now, all of the, or I guess the 2 that were involved in this Valiant Shield, it says each of the Nimitz-class aircraft carriers can carry around 60 airframes. So 60, I'll show you on the next slide something interesting, but this is the Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan, which is CVN 76. Carrier strike groups conducted separate group sails on Friday in the South China Sea and Philippine Sea with partner nations to kick off the Valiant Shield 2024 exercise. And I had been noticing some interesting numbers with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, which is a charity that you see advertisements. In this case, I saw it on on one TV station. but also on the internet. In regard to the telephone numbers, if you notice the two top numbers, the suffix is 8448, and that's our clue that we actually see in the timeline and also in pi. And then it's interesting that the prefix, the 771, is the common year for Israel right now, 771, counting 365-day years. And then if you look in the lower left, you'll see the suffix is 6868. That's a number we've been seeing a lot of. And lower right, the suffix is 4884, which is sin harpazo, which is another beautiful word for rapture. And then I didn't catch the entire number, but I did catch the suffix was 6060. And I think that may apply to those aircraft carriers. They carry 60 airframes each. So there may be some significance there. I don't know what it is. Maybe the fact that they just ran the drills, or maybe something will happen further on down the road. We'll just have to see. But some interesting numbers that pop up with this I happen to notice. All right, here's another story that's very interesting. Flight to nowhere. Passengers trapped on a plane for 9 hours as it crossed Atlantic Ocean and then turned around. This was on June 12th. And they started off in the United Kingdom, and then they turned around right over Newfoundland. And that's, of course, Newfoundland is where the last eclipse ended. It was a 9-hour flight to nowhere. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner had been in the air for around 5 hours. There's that 5, the number of grace. It was approaching coast of Newfoundland when the aircraft was forced to divert due to a minor technical issue. As a result, the aircraft, which seats nearly 300 passengers, had to fly back across the ocean to London. By the end of the 9-hour Sky Odyssey, the plane had flown 4,833 miles and traversed the Atlantic twice, but was no closer to its intended destination. Okay, so a very interesting story, but it doesn't stop there. Two doves visited my porch on June 13th, and when that happens, I know I'm going to get a message for some weird reason. Then I watched Left Behind, the 2014 version, that night. The film stars Nicolas Cage, who plays a commercial airline pilot dealing with a plane damaged by a mid-air collision caused by the biblical rapture while they're in flight. And the story is from the book by the series Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye. Flight 257 takes off from New York's JFK Airport en route to London. The Rapture and subsequent collision strike about 3 hours into the flight, forcing them to turn back to JFK. So they did a roundabout very similar to what we just saw on the news, only in the other direction, from New York and then coming back to JFK. And Strong's G257 is a threshing floor. And then, of course, the people left behind were in a threshing floor. But if that isn't enough, there was another story involving the USS Thresher, and this is an old story, actually. They sank in 1963, but the story just popped up in the news, and it says the U.S. Navy freaked. A nuclear submarine was shattered into 5 pieces, and then there's that 5 again, that number of grace. This came out on June 14th. 14th, of course, is Deliverance. But it's odd that they didn't use any pictures of the Thresher in the article. They showed just a generic U.S. Navy submarine on the left, and they showed USS Hawkbill on the right, which is SSN 666. Very strange. And then if we read the article, the USS Thresher sank in April 1963, becoming the first nuclear-powered submarine lost at sea. This tragedy, which killed 129 people, highlighted the inherent dangers of submarine service. Thresher was an advanced attack submarine equipped with state-of-the-art sonar and powerful S-5W reactor. So after completing some dive trials, the Thresher had an unknown malfunction. It sent garbled messages to the Skylark, its companion ship, before it disappeared. The submarine's wreckage was found 2 months later at a depth of 8,400 feet, shattered into 5 pieces. The cause remains uncertain. They have theories about it being saltwater piping or electrical failure. Thresher never surfaced, and it was the lead boat of her class of nuclear-powered attack submarines in the United States Navy. She was the U.S. Navy's second submarine to be named after the Thresher shark. Okay, and then also in the news, this is really interesting. William Anders, he was the Apollo 8 astronaut who took the Earthrise photo. He died in a plane crash. This story came out June 7th, and he was 90 years old. And 90, Strong's G90 is uncorruptness, so perhaps that man was saved. William Anders, an astronaut who was one of the first three people to orbit the moon and who took the famous Earthrise photo, died Friday after a small plane crash north of Seattle. According to NASA, local officials and his family, he was 90. Okay, so regarding Apollo 8, that was 12/21 to the 27th in 1968, and of course it's the first to orbit the moon. Orbited 10 times. It was also the third flight and the first crewed launch of the Saturn V, there's that 5 again, launch vehicle. Apollo 8 took 68 hours to travel the distance to the moon. And then, of course, we have Apollo 11 after that, who actually landed on the moon. That's July 16 to 24th, 1969. Anything more? Again, used a Saturn V rocket. It was fired off from Kennedy Space Center from Merritt Island, Florida. And it was the 5th crewed mission of NASA's Apollo program. Okay, so if we put those two back to back, we get Apollo 8, first to orbit the moon, Apollo 11, first to land on the moon, and we get 8/11. So this seems like it's pointing forward to sometime in the future to what we have right now, 8.11 billion people on the Earth. And if we count from that first launch of Apollo 8, 12/21/68, count the years to 7/1/24, we get 55 years, 6 months, 10 days, or 666 months, 10 days. I thought that was interesting. And 55 means sincerely. So we've got a population count here, 8.11, and we also have a message, 55, which is sincerely, and it's pointing to that date, 7/1. Well, there's some other interesting things that surround this as well. If we go to 12/21/1968, there was actually a galactic alignment that happened on the same day as the Apollo 8 launch. And if we look at it from Jerusalem, we get a time of 11/11. And Strong's, of course, 11/11 is murmur. And, of course, long after this, we have two 11-year-long signs, 1968 to 2012. It's 44 years. So pointing towards a fishing trip again. And if we move it away from Jerusalem and take a look at what's happening at the launch point, we get the galactic alignment from Merritt Island, the same day as the Apollo 8 launch, and Strong's G411, this is the time, is unspeakable and indescribable. But if that isn't enough, if we put the 411 with the 0 at the end, 4110, we get plasma. And plasma, of course, is the thing formed. That plasma is ionized gas. So we have, from the rocket launch, ionized gas or plasma. Very interesting. Now, the launch took place actually about a little over 3 hours after this, I guess, 7 o'clock in the morning. So interesting, though, the same day, galactic alignment. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see that it's very nicely centered on the galactic equator. And this is the galactic alignment at 411. Apollo 8 was launched at 12:51 UTC, 7:51 Eastern Standard Time on December 21st, same day as this galactic alignment, using the Saturn V's 3 stages to achieve Earth orbit. Strong's 751 is Master of the Horse, and this indeed is a large horse, and 1251 is here, and I can't imagine how loud this would have been if you were near to the launch of a Saturn V rocket. So very, very interesting. Okay, so let's switch gears and let's take a look at the number in pi, the string that gives us the 68 code, since we were just looking at 1968. 153-2023-68. 2368 is the numerical value of Jesus Christ in the Greek, and Strong's H2368 means signet or seal, and this certainly is his the value of his name, but it's also a signet or a seal. And Strong's H68 means stone or stones, plural, and I thought it was also interesting that it means plummet, and that's what happens when the rapture takes place. The world population drops or plummets. If we look for the best fit for this, if we take a look at where it's actually used, it's in Exodus 28:11 with the work of an engraver in stone, H68, like the engravings of a signet, and then there's H2368. You shall engrave the two stones, again H68, with the names of the sons of Israel. You shall set them in settings of gold. Okay, so we've got two stones indicated by this H68 in this usage. And that's exactly what we found when we did the day counts from these last three dates, starting from the eclipse. And it's interesting that I had 8 day count pairs before that were developed really well, and then kind of ended until that eclipse happened, and that pointed me to look further for more dates, and then I found 3 new dates from that. So it's as if this day count, or the 68 days in 2 stones, couldn't have been used until after the eclipse. So here it is again, the 84-week timeline. Here we have 8 day count pairs. This is the original. And then after the eclipse, I started looking some more, and I found 3 new ones. We have 46 days, 68, and 84. And if you look at it by pattern recognition, you just put, back to back, 48 weeks and 84 weeks, well, we get a 4884. And if we take the eclipse date, 48, and we add 84 days, or concatenate that, we get 4884 again. So we have 2 instances of that. And that's, of course, in Strong's is sin harpazo, which is a caught or to seize by force and carry away. So we've got a very good rapture-like word there. Let's see. Okay, so we added some new dates to this timeline too that gave us those day counts. And we had, I'm not going to go through everything here. We had lots of counts that gave holiness, sanctification, a fishing hook, purity, setting aside a nullification for a date that we didn't need, which was 115. We didn't need to count to that. We need to count forward. And then 122, of course, is after the prospective rapture. That gives us of a goat, which is probably speaking about those left behind. And then we have unawares, sudden, unchangeable. And then all that comes out of the 524-24 and adding 531 days to it. When we do that, we get 11-6-25. But if you write it like you would in a European date, you'd get 6-11, right? You'd have the day first and then the month. And if we do that, we get Strong's G611, which is answer. So this is the answer. Also, those 3 new dates, the 115, 222, and 524, show up in John real nicely. 115, this was he of whom I said. And then 222, he had risen from the dead. So this speaks of resurrection. And then 524, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me has everlasting life. So this is rapture theme, resurrection, having everlasting life, and so on and so forth. And just quickly, we had 2 4884s pointing into 71. 71 in Strong's is go, bring forth. July 1st is Sivan 25, and then if we look at the numbers there, 325, we get I send up and deliver. And then again, we added Abba Father plus Jesus the Son, 5:24:24, and you're seen in two verses that justify those day counts, the 46 and the 47 day counts in Galatians. And then finally, at the bottom, I just show that to you. It's Abba plus Jesus, 5:24:24, and then in the other case, 524 plus 24 days. And then Drayton Bunyan had found this string, and if we apply it to the eclipse date, we get 68 days in both directions, give us letter and holy place. So this whole thing on 4/8 was a letter, or a sort of a broadcast, or a newspaper article, whatever you want to call it, a news flash, letter about the holy place. And then, but it's also telling us, if we count 28 days to 311, which means delay, that this was not the actual rapture. This is flight delayed. And it confirms that again by pointing to 718, which is espouse or to join a marriage, and then 101 days be impossible. So at that point, it's impossible. That's not the date. Previously, we had 8 day count pairs were centered on 4/8, and now we have 3 new ones, 46, 68, and 84, making a total of 11. So we had 811, or 8.11 billion people. If we look at 518 Pentecost Eve and do that 68 day count, we get 311, which is delay, and then 725 is Harpagmos, so the rapture is delayed. And again, 524:24, 68 days gives us by force or constraint. That's a description of the rapture. And then rest, again, is a description of the rapture. And 425 is 524 backwards, saying to us this is, kind of quietly saying that this is not it yet. And then if we add the 24 days like we're told to, then we come to 617, which is 311 on the Hebrew, and that means delay. So all 3 of these dates were delay. But if we play that same game with July 1st, which is Sivan 25, we get from the 68 days, we get go up and sincere. And then if we try to put the delay in there, the 311, we get 112 days, which means without God. So if you're seeing a delay at that point, it's without God. He's not saying that. And then if we count forward to, there's going to be a comet in Virgo that's birthed, and that's 1010 this year. We count 101 days, and that means be impossible. So we're not looking at that point because it would already have happened. So for 7/1/2024, we're cleared for departure. Then I found this string 7/26/2023, 8:53:6. That gave us the time, the 8:53, and then Drayton found the 8196, and that 6, of course, gave us the AM. So we had a confirmation in a different place, in this particular string, but it also points us to Sinarpazo again, because in the position, if we look at the position, it's prefixed by 4884, which is Sinarpazo, to seize by force and carry away. So this is speaking rapture again, even in this string. The eclipse date in the number pi. So if we look at that, Drayton had found this string 8448/2024-44. So you actually have the date of the eclipse sandwiched in between 84 and 44. Well, this turns out, I believe, to be an instruction to add 84 days to the date. And if you do that, you come up with the first date of 7/1/2024, the prospective rapture. And there's another instruction to subtract 44 from the result. If you do that, then you come up with a second date, 5/18/2024, which is Pentecost Eve. And we have some other interesting things going on in the position there. Be made known, be prepared by force or constraint, to be restored to a correct life, a fishing hook. So this is all applicable to this rapture. And then if that wasn't enough, we have 726 in a particular string that gives us the date again of that eclipse, 4/8/2024. And then Harpazo is confirmed in another string with 8448. The prefix is 726, Harpazo. The last position is 24, giving us the year. And then we looked at Luke 17. If we put that back to back with the date, there is actually a string in here that's 1771, 2024. So we get another confirmation with a prefix of 125, pointing us to Revelation 12:5, where the child is caught up to God and to his throne. And we also have some numbers in here that give us some more descriptions of this fishing trip. We have sail, depart by ship, long, far, depart, air, perhaps mixing metaphors here, I guess. We're going through the air. Anyway, interesting numbers in pi. So let's take another turn. Let's go to 53 years ago, 1971. And in 19, we have the numbers 5 plus 14. 5 is grace, 14 is deliverance, and the date 7/1. So let's see what we can find here. There was another article. This was on June 11th. A jet missing since 1971 was found submerged in Vermont's Lake Champlain. 6/11, the date, is actually Strong's answer. So we get an answer 53 years later, it seems. And then 53 years after a private plane carrying 5 men, there's that number 5 again, Grace, disappeared on a snowy Vermont night. Experts believe they have found the wreckage of the long-lost jet in Lake Champlain. The corporate jet disappeared shortly after departing Burlington Airport for Providence, Rhode Island on January 27th, 1971. Those aboard included 2 crew members and 3 employees, so this was a corporate jet, is what they're saying. Initial searches for the 10-seat jet commander turned up no wreckage, and the lake froze over 4 days later. At least 17 other searches happened. 17, of course, is Victory. And then until underwater searcher Gary Kozak and a team using a remotely operated vehicle last month found the wreckage of the jet. So it goes on to say the sonar images were taken of the wreck found in 200 feet. And 200 is remember the 200 cubits from shore in John 21:11? That was one of the clues there. And if we go back to Strong's here, this was January 27th when the plane disappeared. 127 is shamefacedness or reverence. So I'm not quite sure how that fits in, but anyway, interesting that this is just run a short time ago, a few weeks ago, and it involves 1971 and a jet found. Okay, Dragnet. Now this isn't actually in 71. This is the TV series. Dragnet was 67 to 70, but it did go into early 70s reruns, so it should have been run in 71. And it's about 2, detectives or two Los Angeles Police Department officers, Sergeant Joe Friday, who's played by Jack Webb, and Officer Bill Gannon, played by Harry Morgan. And the opening of the show shows this sergeant's badge, number 714. 714, if you expand it out, you can see that the 202 is missing if you want to call this the rapture date. And if we insert that 202, we get the full rapture date, 7/1/2024. And that 204, of course, I didn't find until last year. And that's when this stuff was being revealed. So I doubt back in 1971 that this, was revealed or could have been found. But it is now, and it seems to be the full rapture date. If that wasn't enough, if we look at Harry Morgan's number or his badge number from his identification here, we get 84, which is sandwiched in between 4/8. Well, if you add 84 days to that date this year of the eclipse, 4/8, you come up with 7/1/2024. So I thought this was absolutely interesting that we're seeing all these different convergences on 7-1. And William Conrad is an interesting fellow. Not only did he do the series Canon, but he was also in a number of movies, and he narrated quite a bit. He narrated, I believe, The Fugitive. He was born in 1920, but he died February 11th, 1994. He was an American actor, producer, director. His career spanned 5 decades. There's that number of grace again. He was in radio, film, television, and the detective series Canon. And then I just picked out 2 movies that are kind of striking. They give our numbers again. In 55, he did 5 Against the House. There's that grace again. And it's an American heist film. This is what they call it. And let's see, Kim Novak, Brian Keith, he was supporting cast for this. And the film centers on a fictional robbery. There's that robbery theme again of a real Nevada casino, which was Harold's Club. And then in 59, he did a movie called 30, and that's a 1959 movie directed by Jack Webb. And let's see here, it's about a Los Angeles newspaper, and 30 is used to signify the end or over and out. So it's when they were transmitting a news story, they would put 30 at the end to show that that was the end of the story. Well, if you take the death of William Conrad, the date, you get February 11th, which is 2/11. Again, we've got that robbery or that heist. And then if you take the end of Jesus' earthly life in the age of the law, in AD 30, and you add it to the year that this fellow passed away, 1994, you get 2024, which should be the end of the age of grace. So you have a 2/11 in 2024. That's the message. But it doesn't stop there. If we take a look at the Canon series, I just happened to notice this while I was watching this episode. And this is an episode of Canon called Call Unicorn. And it originally aired on September 28th, 1971. And if you notice the numbers in the dial there, an area code of 311, and then we have a number 555-2368. Well, Strong's 311 again is delay or putting off. And from 1971, again, that would be a 53-year delay. And 5 represents grace, and 555 connects the galactic alignment on 12/22 last year to 3 signs by 5 years, 5 days, and 5 hours. So that was the revealing. We had a revealing of all sorts of things last year, 2023. And I believe that was a precursor to what's going to happen this year, the rapture in 2024. And if that's not enough, this is signed, it seems, by Jesus. It has 2368 as the numerical value of Jesus Christ in Greek, and this is his signet at the end of this. How this got in there, only heaven knows. But I found this absolutely, positively fascinating. Okay, and then going back to Led Zeppelin, I found a lot more. So this is what I showed last time. This is Led Zeppelin releasing Stairway to Heaven on 8th of November, 1971. So we get a date of 8/11, there's that population, 71, on their untitled 4th studio album. And they played 2 dates back in 71, March 11th and March 14th, from 8 to 11 p.m., and they both included Stairway to Heaven. And Strong's G311, of course, again means delay or putting off, and this again was 53 years in delay. And 314 is to know certainly. So this is kind of promoting this as, hey, here it is. This is to know certainly. And if you look at the number of the ticket in the center at the top, it's 868. Well, that means depart. Okay, so they did a concert back in 77. This is at the Kingdome. And if you notice, it's reminiscent of Kingdom. And this was promoted by a radio station was giving away free tickets called KGON, K-G-O-N. KGON, as in gone in the rapture, perhaps. And this was on July 17th, 1977 in Seattle, Washington. And that carries the numbers 17 and 71. Led Zeppelin's 77 North American tour was their 11th and final concert tour of North America. The Kingdome event hosted an audience of 62,000. The tour was divided in 3 legs. They gave performances on 1 April, which is 1/4, and the number of Deliverance, and concluding on 24th of July. But if you reverse that, if you make it July 24th, you get 7/24, which is an Harpagmos, another word for Rapture. 77 for 44 shows. There's that fishing hook. Anyway, all the numbers involved in this, if you see at the bottom there, 200 were injured. And then we have issue number 206 of this magazine, I guess, advertising the concert. So you've got, with all these numbers, it's amazing. 17, 71, 9, 77, 11, 14, 724, 44, 200, and 206. Well, the 724, of course, was a robbery, or the Harpagmos. And then we had the fishing hook. 77 is without charge. Of course, the Rapture is without charge as long as you're born again. And then Acheron, 206 is Acheron, or the end, or the highest, or the extreme. So lots of what seemed like relative numbers, or relevant numbers. And not only that, the concert was at the Kingdome. And then now we have the heist. There is a heist involved with Led Zeppelin, believe it or not, a big one. There was a story, Inside the Daring 1973 NYC hotel heist that robbed Led Zeppelin of $200,000. Let's see, that was by the NY Post. And then here's another, Led Zeppelin robbed of 203G. Well, if we reverse that and we look at it in Strong's, we get G203, which is uncircumcision, a condition in which the corrupt desires rooted in the flesh were not yet extinct. So in other words, these guys are still bad boys. They're into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, essentially. Before their third and final show at Madison Square Garden in 1973, the members of Led Zeppelin were robbed of roughly $200,000 in cash from their luxurious Drake Hotel safe deposit box. Tour manager Richard Cole claimed all the contents were accounted for when he checked the box around 1 a.m. on July 29th, but discovered the robbery around 7:30 p.m. Cole scoured the band's rooms for the money and any trace of drugs as the New York City police and FBI began to investigate. He relocated the group to an apartment on East 86th Street to allow the situation to cool down. Cole had the only key to the strong box, which made him the prime suspect. Writer Bob Spitz claimed of then-manager Peter Grant no less than 5 sources, there's that 5 again, close to the band told this author that Grant had admitted spiriting the Drake money away. At the time, the Post reported that it was the largest ever hotel cash robbery in New York City. Grant was arrested and jailed in a cell at 100 Center Street, but before his arraignment, a settlement was reached that allowed the case to be dismissed. So I put in here, is this an incidence of grace? In other words, you have 5 sources that say that he did it, and the number of grace, and then his case was dismissed. Was this grace? Rather interesting. But a huge heist, and that's what we're looking for in roughly about a week from this video, I hope. And Led Zeppelin, there's also a message, I think, in what happened to poor John Henry Bonham. He was born in 48 and then died September 25th, 1980 at age 32. And then Strong's 32 is messenger, also angel, and a messenger from God. And I think there is a message in this. If we take the date of his death, September 25th, 80, to 6/4/2024, which is when I was researching this, and this is when I came up with this, was on June 4th. We get 43 years, 8 months, 11 days, including the end date. Well, there's that 8/11 again, or 524 months, and there's that date, 5/24. And you even get an 11 in there too. So it's some very, very relevant numbers, I think. But not only that, Led Zeppelin disbanded the same year Bonham died. So it lasted from 1968 to 1980, which was 12 years. And the number 12 is a symbol of God's power and authority. Well, I think there's another message in here too. If he passed in 1980 and Led Zeppelin ended in 1980, if we count from 1980 to 2024, we get 44 years, and that's Strong's G44 is a fishing hook. We're back with that fishing trip again, the fishing trip theme. So again, we're pointed towards this year. And if that wasn't enough, from the top 10 highest selling Led Zeppelin albums until 2023, and this was counting up till about December of 2023, we have two of the highest selling albums, Led Zepp 2 and Led Zepp 4. Led Zepp 2 sold 16 million copies, and then Led Zepp 4, 38 million, so they were the two highest. And if we put those two back to back, we get 24. So another thing pointing towards 2024, I believe. Okay, this is totally amazing. I couldn't believe this when I found this. So we've got an interview where Robert Plant, this is recent, talks about Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. This is the big interview. And first thing is, we get the time that he's signaling out, or seems to be in this video. This is the only time Plant touches his nose during the interview. So he does it right at this particular time, as if to say, hey, pay attention, there's something here. And this is at the time of 7:01 or 7/1/24. That's what it seems to be pointing to, the date of the rapture. And then if that's not enough, the length of the video is 8:11 or 8.11 billion people. Well, if we look at the number of views that I found that particular day, this was on June 2nd, you get 868,000. Well, 868 Strong's is Depart. And if we look at 336,000 subscribers on this, Strong's G336 is a taking up. So the whole thing is talking about rapture, it seems. And 14K, 14 is the number of deliverance. And then 9 months, 9 of course is completion. So this is totally, it seems, marked with rapture speak, with what's about to happen on 7/1/2024, or so it seems. And Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, they're still doing concerts, and they're scheduled to be doing a concert at the Ironstone Amphitheater in Murphys, California on August 21st at 7:30 p.m. And there's some interesting numbers here too. If we take the date, 9/19 last year, of the head Nishimura, the comet, joined to the body Virgo by the comet Schumacher-Levy, in other words, symbolizing the head Jesus coming together with the church. And that wasn't the only sign that day. We had the child asteroid born from Virgo. I think that happened a few days prior to that, but you could see it in that position. So we had a number of signs on that day, 9/19. If you count that to the prospective rapture day, 7/1, it's 286 days. Well, it also shows up in a sign at the Ironstone Vineyards, maximum occupancy of 286, you can see on the right there. And I guess they're showing that for their dining room and their gift shop. So that, I guess that particular floor had a maximum occupancy of 286, which means lamb. And if you look at the date, August 21st, it says handle shamefully. So I'm not quite sure what that means. I guess if we're looking forward to that date, it's after the rapture, so it's being handled shamefully because we'll be gone. At least that's the way I interpret it there. It can be interpreted differently. Let me know in the comments. 7:30, the time, a possible allusion to the return of Christ in 2030, maybe. 7 God's number, and 30, 2030, who knows. But anyway, I thought this was interesting because it seems to be pointing towards something post-rapture. And it seems to be saying if you're pointing towards that, it's not good. Okay, so Ichthys, just for the halibut. I wanted to show this again, and this is at 7/1/24, that date at 8:53 a.m. MST from Mazatlan. And again, if you look at the Strongs for the width to height ratio, you get unprofitable and changing. So, in other words, if you waited this long, if you waited till this time on this day, you're in trouble because things are changing. So you're out of luck. You better be born again before this. And we have Nishimura is right next to Argo Navis, and Nishimura, of course, represents Jesus, and he's on Puppis, the poop deck, so he's controlling the ship. And then we also have a 7-planet lineup above the horizon with one planet beneath, so that gives us another instance of 7/1 on the day 7/1. And then if you look at Pons, Brooks is there. That's Pons is bridge, Brook is water or small stream, and that comet has a periodicity of 71 years. So again, we get a 7/1, which seems to be confirming this day. And then also on this day at that time, if we look at Gemini, it looks like we have an Omega wedding scene going on. Castor is the alpha star in that constellation, and then Pollux is the beta. So if we consider Jesus as the alpha and the omega, then he would be Castor, represented by Castor, joined together with Pollux, I guess, representing us. And strangely enough, the sun is there, Venus is there representing Jesus, but we also have the omega star of that constellation dead center, right between Castor and Pollux. So it's as if saying this is, once this happens, this is the end. And this was from Sacramento, but this particular time is also the same as Mazatlan, which is Mountain Standard Time. Pacific Daylight Time and Mountain Standard Time happen to be the same on this day. So you could consider it. In fact, you'd see basically the same thing from Mazatlan. Okay, how many estimated to be raptured? We did this last year. We came up with interesting numbers: 1.44 billion sealed Christians, 6.66 billion left behind. And Christina's dream was 725 was there, but no one could find 811. Well, the world population, I believe, will plummet from 8.11 billion people at the rapture. So here are some numbers. Here's this was today, I believe. Okay, so 244 on 624. Current world population is there. We're still at 8.11 billion if you don't round. And then if you project ahead, we still have 8.12 billion people on 7/5, but that's not supposed to happen if the rapture happens on 7/1. So we've got no 8.12 billion people on 7/5, and 5, of course, is the number of grace. So if that doesn't happen, that implies there's no more grace. Christina's dream interpreted, world population dropped suddenly from 8.11 billion people at the rapture. I also threw in 524.24 here because we got a sign on that day. We had the sun was centered on the line between Atlas and Secunda Hyactum in Taurus at 8:11. So it's not only do we have Christina's dream, but we also have an actual sign in the sky on 524 that says 8:11. And that was Mountain Standard Time, again, Mazatlan, Mexico. And if that wasn't enough, the 84-week timeline also confirms 8:11 in a date and with day count pairs. So we've got 8:11 going on like crazy here. I'm going to throw up the date and the times here just so you can see, so you have an idea of when this prospective rapture is going to happen. And then I say Sin Arpazo is a go because that's what we got in the Strong's words, we got go. And, okay, finally, I'm going to end on this. The 2024 Summer Olympics are in Paris, and interestingly, the dates are 7/26 to 8/11. So we have 7/26 harpazo, and then we have 8/11, which speaks to the number of people in the world, I believe, when the rapture happens. And their motto is Games Wide Open, and this is the games of the 33rd Olympiad. 33, of course, was the year we believe that Christ died and was resurrected. So that's all I have for you. It's getting real close. I hope this is it. So I hope really to see you all in the sky. God bless you all.